Hello, everybody. It's Michael Jaco with Unleashing Intuition Secrets, and I have Brad Olsen back with us again. We're going to be talking about his now released book, Secrets of Antarctica. We've talked about it a couple times already, and now it's available to everybody. It got teased out there by us, and now you guys are actually able to get it. I've looked through it. It's a captivating book, and it gave me a lot of revelations that we're going to talk about. Now, I'll give you a little background on Brad. He is a captivating speaker and author of 10 books, including 3 in his esoteric series, which I highly recommend: Modern Esoteric, Future Esoteric, and the newly released, or more newly released, Beyond Esoteric. An award-winning author, book publisher, and he has helped me republish my books. Fantastic. And event producer. His keynote presentations and interviews have enlightened audiences at Contact in the Desert, UFO Mega Conference, the 5D events, and dozens of radio, including Coast to Coast, Ground Zero, and the Patriot Underground. And of course, here on the Intuitive Warrior channel. So, Brad, thanks so much for coming back on. This is going to be, I think, a very captivating conversation we're going to have. So tell us a little about what's going on with you right now.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Great audience you have out there that really understands a lot of the stuff we're going to be getting into. The untold history and how the Germans in Antarctica never really surrendered. They went underground after the war, and that's why I call the book The Untold History of the Ice Continent, because a lot of it is this untold history of post-World War II in South America and micronations and all the materiel and personnel that they brought down to Antarctica. So it's a great subject that keeps on giving. I mean, this is really just the tip of the iceberg, how much has been withheld from humanity. And that's really in all my 11 books. This is the 11th release. I should have sent you an updated bio, because in my esoteric book series is all the subjects that have been withheld from humanity. So
very good. And what I love about your work is it has lots and lots of insightful photos and maps, and you can just go through the book and just look at the pictures and get a lot of information just from the pictures, and then something's going to captivate you, and you're going to read, and you're going to be, oh my God. So one of those that I saw, you went into Agartha, and both of us have been to Mount Shasta. There's connections there, but you're showing here on a map that it's much more widespread than I even imagined. So yeah, there's so many different things in here that we could jump into.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a whole chapter called Hollow Earth and the entrance to the South Pole, with a big map of rendition of Agartha, as they call it, the land of advanced races. It's not a particular city or location, but the whole region, because also on this map is the city of Shambhala, which the Nazis were doing expeditions to Tibet throughout the whole 1930s. And they found something. They found a lot of things. You remember the movie 7 Years in Tibet with Brad Pitt?
Yeah.
He was portraying Ernst Schaefer, the head of those expeditions. Of course, the movie didn't tell you anything about trying to get in to find Shambhala or what they brought back. But when he came back to Berlin in 1938 with all these records and presumably maps and even diving directions for the U-boats, the Germans wasted no time in getting down to New Schwabenland and making that claim in Antarctica, as well as finding this under the ice route. And that's really the smoking gun of this new book, is that we've got these maps that I came in touch with a research assistant who had started turning me on to all this stuff about the Germans going well deep under the ice, including directions in German. These were straight off the map, where it even calls it to Agartha. They even say this is where you're going with these diving instructions, which on several different maps show the directions and ways to get in there. For example, these maps. Here's a dive map under the ice, up to a lake, down again, and then up again. And then what it looks like from the top, from the side angle, and other detail about where to enter into this network of under ice tunnels. And as I spoke with you another time, it's important to understand and realize that Antarctica is the most volcanically active continent in the world. Wow. So 14 known active volcanoes and 93 known geothermal vents. So you would have the propensity for these large under ice domes to form, and the Germans made these maps to go under there and go to a place called Agartha, which is written right there on the instructions.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've read a lot about the not Buddhist but Hindu yogis who talk about going into deep meditation and then going into these subterranean places, and they had maps like you're talking about, and it sounds like maybe the Germans got wind of it and got some more information. Wonder how, because I know the yogis are very particular about who they share with. So I wonder if they were coerced in some way to give this information up. But it's fascinating, the far-reaching effects of this. And we talked years and years before you came out with this book. You were revealing unbelievable information about how the Nazis basically went to, Argentina, and they have all these little, Bavarian villages all over Argentina. And then I started doing more research, and the Perones were absolutely, come on, let's go. We love you, Nazis. Come to Argentina. So a lot of people didn't realize. I didn't realize that, but through your work over the years, we have seen that, and of course the Scherfs or the Bushes, or however you want to call them, but you revealed that a long time before everybody else knew about that. So your research is exceptional. Good job.
Oh, thank you. And of course, I went down there 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's right around the anniversary of getting on the sailboat and going to Antarctica for 26 days. Very rough passage crossing the Drake Passage. But before that trip to Antarctica, I went to La Falda, which is where the Eden Hotel is, with many eyewitness reports of Hitler surviving the war. And I asked the tour guide afterwards, I said, well, do you really think Hitler survived? He goes, I don't have to think, I know it. I said, well, how do you know it? He said, well, right here in this town, there's an elderly woman who was a chambermaid in the late 1940s. And Hitler and Eva Braun and even their dog, German Shepherd called Blondie, survived the war. They escaped with the U-boats at the very tail end of the war. And why wouldn't they? They had doppelgangers that one of them got shot and they pretended it was Hitler. In that History Channel show called Hunting Hitler, they even got the Soviets to turn over the skull that they had that they thought was Hitler. Turns out the DNA results were it was a woman. So none of that is true. And then you also have the money man, Martin Bormann, who was tried in absentium at the Nuremberg trial, sentenced to death if they ever caught him, but they never caught him. And he kept popping up all over South America in the 1950s. And at the end of the war, many tons of metric gold were smuggled out and taken out of Europe, as well as other priceless artifacts like the Spear of Destiny, which I feature in the book, because that was how the Germans felt nobody could defeat them. And in fact, now you have the Fourth Reich Germans out of Antarctica, but also in these micronations in South America where they exist to this day. You know, I don't know if you've ever had Stuart Swerdlow on your show.
I haven't, but I've watched him on Nino's show.
He's been on Nino, and then he was on with Dr. Michael Sala recently. And
Oh,
he
nice.
knows someone that was born in the bases under the ice in Antarctica. And he said they told him, we would love to come out and tell the world who we are and what we're down here and so forth. But how do you tell the world that the Fourth Reich is existing and still in power in many different ways? And you got the World Economic Forum, which is very Nazi in its basis.
NATO. Yep.
NATO. You've got the IMF. And you love this image. We showed it on the last interview, how all these Germans started NASA. Wernher von Braun started the EU.
Wow.
Started NATO and started the United Nations. They got their own people into all these positions of power. And this is how the Fourth Reich has been more of a underground subversive force.
And I think we talked about how Angela Merkel was an offspring of Hitler and Eva Braun. Is that correct?
That's right.
They had two daughters, I think, right?
And Theresa May, who is, for a brief period, the Prime Minister of the UK. And then there was a third sister, I think it was Lithuania. She was a president. And they all kind of look alike. And
oh, wow. How about that?
Rather than the boys from Brazil, remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
Girls from Brazil or wherever they cloned them or
them. The cloning program. Absolutely. I'm sure they're into that. Now, we talked a little bit in the last show how basically there was like all these earthquakes that are happening at 10 kilometers down. And then these Germans just came popping up into one of these ice stations down there and said, we need some help or something. Tell us about that again.
Yeah, so Dr. Michael Sala and Linda Moulton Howe reported 2.5 years ago how the people at the McMurdo station, which is an American base, the largest base in Antarctica, were rather surprised when dozens of German-speaking people just showed up and said, get us out of here. And it happened to have been right after these earthquakes along the Palmer Peninsula. That would have been the tube tunnel, according to Gene Decode, that they were taking out the bases and their ways to escape. And so some of them got to the surface, got on a snowcat, and made their way over to McMurdo, where they were requesting getting off the continent as soon as possible. So
they got them off and they disappeared them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that we've overcome the Nazis in Antarctica. What are your thoughts?
Well, they don't like to be called Nazis anymore. They prefer to be known as the German Antarctic Germans.
The Fourth Reich.
And the Fourth Reich, yeah. And so they have been successful in building several, not just Point 211 or Base 211 on the surface and below the surface, but several different colonies. The biggest being the New Berlin base. And I do believe that New Berlin base is close to the hole in the ice under the South Pole. That's where the giant gaping hole is. And that's where Admiral Byrd, in his diary, describes flying into it in the early weeks of Operation High Jump, where he had the 3 hours of missing time. And look, you don't survive out in that climate with 3 hours of missing time. And certainly you wouldn't have had enough gas to just be circling around lost. He obviously went somewhere. And in that time, he went down in this hole. And that's where he said originally the radio broke off. And then he lost control of the plane. And it was just being steered remote control. He was like, what the heck's going on here? Then all of a sudden, these two UFOs, which he called Flugelrods, even though there's no word in the German language for that, they come wingtip to wingtip with Nazi insignia on the Flugelrods. And then over the radio comes a Germanic voice that says, hello, Admiral Byrd. "You are in good hands. We will be arriving in the domain of the Ariane very soon." And the plane lowered like a helicopter. So they had some kind of anti-gravity working with them. And then he was summoned to meet with the master, which he did, who were very upset that the US were exploding nuclear bombs. Keep in mind, this is in late 1946, so just a little over a year after the nuclear tests at White Sands and then Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And he was told, because he was a very high ranking member of the Pentagon and very well regarded on the surface world, the master says this to him, and Byrd thinks to himself, surface world, where am I? And the master was telepathic. He says, yes, you're in the domain of the Ariane in this futuristic city. And nearby were some of the Germans. So I think they were allowed to build the New Berlin base there. And I've got a quote from Terzinsky, who is a Russian researcher who went through a lot of the information that was released right after the Cold War. And I put this quote, this is the second printing, which just arrived today. It's already sold through the first printing.
Wow. Congratulations. Good job.
Thank you. And Terzinsky says, and I quote, "The city of New Berlin was developed into the inner earth, and part of the Germans' South Polar colony were admitted by the inner earthlings to build a city there. They built most of the buildings that architect Albert Speer was planning to build. They later established shoulder-to-shoulder cooperation of the Russians and the Americans quietly of the Illuminati government." So that quote right there says so much. Not only that they built their Berlin landscape down there under the ice, but then they eventually came to terms with the Americans and the Russians per the Antarctica Treaty, that they were to be left alone, that they weren't going to do a flyover over the capital anymore. They had done that. And that really kind of ruffled the feathers when that's the photo, the famous photo over the Capitol and all the headlines. That was the Antarctic Germans not necessarily issuing surrender to the Americans, but a truce to say, hey, we don't want you coming back with another invasion force like High Jump. Just chill out and leave our bases and colonies alone. And the third one is called the Thule Refuge, where that's on the outskirts of New Schwabenland. But I would imagine they all interconnect. So it's quite a network of bases and colonies where thousands of Germans relocated. Not only Germans, but then they got women out of the Ukraine at the end of the war. And then, according to David Hatcher Childress in one of his books on Antarctica, people from Croatia volunteered, including women and some of the soldiers that were left that were sympathetic to the Third Reich. They said, sure, we'll go to Antarctica. Let's go. And so they had to populate their colony. And so to this day, the Antarctic Germans are still down there. And so we talked about how those Germans wanted to be released, and then about Stuart Swerdlow reporting he knew someone that lives in the Fourth Reich down there. And then you also have a book that was sent to Carrie Cassidy at Project Camelot, and it's called The New Berlin Base. And the guy describes his life living down there, eventually finding his way through some inner earth passages, popping out in Asia, and then migrating back to German because he spoke German. And he wrote this book, which is kind of like a technical treatise about some of their super high technology. I can send you a copy if you want. It's mind-blowing, really. And Carrie Cassidy had some people that translated it into English. So it's quite amazing.
So in your book, you talk about the Falklands War.
Yes.
And I remember the Falklands War. I was in the military at the time frame, and it was like we're watching that. Britain basically went down because Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands and South Georgia. and that was back in 1982. So I was wondering about that. I was like, how could Argentina be so bold? But now that we know that the Germans have basically taken over Argentina, uh, it makes absolute complete sense. And you were talking about the black goo that they were really fighting that war over, and that's wow, that's like double whammy. Wow, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I'd just come back from the UK where I presented last month at the Bases Project with Miles Johnston, who I actually reprint a conversation that we had about the black goo. And he's had some of the premier people of researchers of the black goo on the Bases Project. That is Harold Kotzvela and David Griffin, who have presented at the Bases Conference and gave us some really amazing information about meeting some of the sailors who were part of the Falkland Wars. And a lot of people don't know, this is from Wikipedia, that the force split into two. We all heard about the very lopsided war off of the Falklands, which to me made no sense at all. Why are they sending down this huge invasion force when sheep outnumber people 1,000 to 1? Right? They said, well, it's for offshore oil. Okay, but they got North Sea oil for that. They don't have to fight this war all the way down there.
Yeah.
The second fighting force, they go down there to finish the whole Falkland conflict at this super remote island called South Thule Island. And Google Earth screens it out, but I think that is the peninsula where their base was located, and there was this cave that had the black goo. And the researchers who were down there, without firing a shot, surrendered. The British got it. What do? They blow the whole place up. They just level it, and they take the black goo and they bring it up to the UK to start backward engineering it. And so we were on the panel at the bases on the final day, and Penny Bradley, who is in Nachtwaffen, as well as Drago Reed, who is there live, the subject of the black goo came up. And they said they had both ingested it as super soldiers because it gives you this incredible stamina and ability to withstand really intense pressurized environments, such as in outer space or in a submarine. And that's what the whole Falkland Wars was about, was to get black goo and try to backward engineer it to enhance their own super soldiers.
Now you talk about how they were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. I heard, through different channels that the whatever they were fighting was like superhuman, was like some kind of designed beings that they were fighting against, and it was brutal. Maybe some of them had some of the black goo in them or something. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah. That and genetic engineering. So I recruited a couple of very adept remote viewers, and I gave them the coordinates in Antarctica to look at, 3 of them. And all 3 of them came back and said what they viewed in this area of New Schwabenland was this huge cloning laboratory. And they were doing some really nasty stuff, combining human DNA with animals. They're called chimeras, but also some really hardy looking, they call them the polar men. So there was these series of articles about Operation Tamerlane in the magazine called Nexus. And Operation Tamerlane, during my trip to Antarctica, I visited a couple of their spy stations. One was called Port Lockroy, and another one was near the Ukrainian Vernansky base, which was donated by the Brits. And they were spying on the Germans. They were listening to the communication from the U-boats. And one of the very last communiques of the guy from the Luftwaffe, Goring was to Terra del Fuego, to a U-boat, all the way down there at the very southern tip that was on its way to Antarctica. And then he got caught, he got put on trial, and he committed suicide before they could execute him. But the whole point of Tamerlan was to spy on the Nazis during World War II, and they knew that they were setting up these bases. And so they, in this series of magazine articles, they went to Antarctica with one of their elite teams, kind of like a Navy SEAL team, to get down under the ice. And the last thing they heard from these guys, who of course never returned, was that they were being chased by these Arctic men, which are super tall and hairy and could survive the intense cold on the surface. And presumably they got caught and all executed.
Wow. Do you think they were, somebody mentioned dogmen. Do you think they were some kind of dogman type DNA clone something?
Well, but they were bipedal, so they weren't on all fours.
Right.
But they stood tall. They're very, very tall, very hairy. So I remember at the time I was reading the article, it reminded me more of a Bigfoot or an abominable snowman.
Yeah.
Maybe they got the DNA from Yeti and combined it, and then jacked them up on the black goo.
Yeah. So I remember I did a remote view on the going back in time and looking at who they were fighting, and I saw soulless beings that had black eyes. So they were definitely not human, and they were designed. That's what I got from it.
Doesn't that also mean they're devoid of a soul?
Yeah.
Black eyes.
Yep. Soulless. Yep.
So
there's lots of different programs. We know these programs. We talked about these. Now, Javier, what's it? How do you pronounce his last name? Milei.
Yep.
Who's now the Argentinian president? When we came in and we started the Elon Musk started, tearing down our corrupt, government stuff. That came from Javier Milei. So that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So he started the process of destroying the Nazi control system down there in Argentina, and we backed him because he was having some problems. And Trump came in and he backed him, and then we have Elon Musk doing basically the same thing. They showed Javier with like a chainsaw, and Elon had the chainsaw out one time. So similar things are going on. That's kind of what is leading me to believe that their bases are basically being taken, and they're now I know. Let's jump to Mars. So we know they went to Mars, and probably they colonized some other places as well. Everybody's on the moon, so they probably got a little spot on the moon as well. But they definitely completely controlled Mars. And in my secret space program stuff, I know that I wasn't part of the Nazi stuff, and I was a counter to the Nazi stuff in my secret space program. Upbringing and training and all that stuff. I never went to Mars, and I although we work with the not the Fourth Reich guys, we always knew that they weren't as advanced as we were, because their consciousness, the way they're very controlled, and they're not creative like we are, and that's one of the reasons why we continually defeat them. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, they set up several micro nations in South America too. So it's not just Antarctica, even though on the back of the book I say all roads lead to Antarctica. Of course, no roads lead to Antarctica, but a lot of the disclosure stuff, as well as the secret space program stuff, come out of there. So not far away from La Falda, where the Eden Hotel was, there is this famous mountain that's known for UFO sightings. So we go there, and sleeping out of the van. We'll do a night watch. We'll stay up as late as we can. And this is in the Cordoba Sierras. It's another mountain range in Antarctica, in Argentina, that a lot of people don't know about. Not nearly as dramatic or high as the Andes. But nonetheless, here we go into this town. There's pictures of aliens on convenience stores and UFOs and stuff. I mean, it feels like like riding into Rachel, Nevada, that we went and did a night watch.
I know, that was great
some years back. And so this was the same kind of the place. So we find a spot, we find the mountain, and we do a night watch. And in reading in The Lonely Planet, it says, oh yeah, in 1985, there was a UFO that came down near town. It left a burn mark. Then we got to there were a whole bunch of people that got abducted in very dramatic fashion. So it's a very well-known place. So I get back from this trip, and I'm talking to David Hatcher-Childress, who also does a lot of books on Antarctica and German UFOs. And he says, Brad, those weren't aliens in that mountain. That's one of the underground bases that the Germans were testing their Honeyboo and their Virlcraft. So this was one of their micronations. This is where they bought up these huge land holdings in Brazil and Chile and Argentina, that some of the technology went there and some of the personnel went there. And they're towns, as you mentioned at the beginning, that are like you're stepping into a Bavarian town. Bariloche down in southern Patagonia is a great example. And I've been to Germany many times. And this is takes a page right out of the playbook.
Yeah, that's it's fascinating work. What you're involved with. You're all over the map like I am on some of this stuff. When you do that, you start to run across a lot of people that are very interested and have been doing a lot of research. So who do you see is cutting edge research right now, besides yourself, of course?
Well, certainly the people that helped me with this book, David Hatcher-Childress, Linda Moulton Howe, and Dr. Michael Sala, and some of the interviews they've done, like Linda's interviews with Brian S., who she graciously passed on his contact info. And I had an hour-long conversation with him last year when I was researching this book. He flew over the hole in the ice because they were stationed out of the South Pole Station, and they had to do an emergency evacuation. And with permission, I put in his map. This is Brian S.'s map with the hole in the ice. And when he talked to Linda, so I was really interested in that. And I said, well, give me a play-by-play. What happened? So they had to do this emergency evacuation to the Davis base. They fly out from the South Pole Station, and rather than go 20 minutes, half hour around the no-fly zone, the pilot just said, we're just going to cut through here because this guy's life's on the line. And there was no air sampling station, Brian told me. Then he saw all these tracks on the snow with snowmobiles and snowcats heading out in this direction. He thought, that's kind of weird. It's even a no-go zone on the ground. And even says that on some of these maps I reproduce of the South Pole area of this no-fly zone. And they're flying over, and everybody in the crew, Michael, half a dozen of them, all saw this hole in the ice. And these snowmobile tracks were heading right for it. And then I asked him about that. I said, well, geez, what was that like? And he said, there's a road that corkscrews down into the hole. Wow. So you can actually drive down the 2 miles of the polar plateau to get to whatever's down there. And this is the same hole in this clean air sector of Antarctica. Here's a blow up of it. And get this, not only is that clean air sector no fly and a no-go zone, but that is exactly where Admiral Byrd flew his flight over the South Pole in 1946 when he returned. So he was the very first aviator to fly over it in 1929. So he knew, and he must have seen it, because get this, I reproduce his flight map, and look at this. Right when he gets to the South Pole, rather than just doing a fist bump, yeah, we made it to the South Pole, he goes about 150 miles out of his way. And guess what? That is exactly the spot where the no-fly zone is. So he saw it, and he then returned to it and then flew in, and that was in his diary that was found by his son. And a lot of people don't know this, but his son, who's also named Richard Byrd, went with him as a junior officer on high jump.
I didn't know that. That's pretty amazing.
Everything. Yeah. And so Richard Byrd, his father, died at 68, right after he came back from Operation Deep Freeze, which one of Kerry Cassidy's whistleblower, Captain Mark Richards, in his book on Operation High Jump, which I bought at the UFO Congress and read the whole thing and highlighted it. He said that one of the concessions with the Antarctic Germans, after they got their ass whooped in high jump, where the ships came right up out of the ocean and attacked and sliced one of the ships in half, one of the concessions was they wanted one of those UFOs so bad. So the whole point of Operation Deep Freeze was the Germans gave them one of the UFOs, which was whisked right back. And so Byrd goes on an interview. He was given a gag order for the rest of his life, but he's on that Longines Watch interview, and he kept talking about this land beyond the pole, that young explorers, if they go to Antarctica, they could go beyond the pole, and that's where they'll find new discoveries. Well, what does that even mean? Because up on the polar plateau, in every direction, is just a giant ice field. There's nothing beyond the poles, unless he's talking about the hole in the ice, which I think he was. So Admiral Byrd died of a heart attack, and we know they have the heart attack gun. He was in phenomenal shape, just like James Forrestal, who they say is the first casualty of the UFO cover-up. And those two were good buddies. So as soon as
he flew out of the window in Bethesda, and it was the same place where Nixon went, and they're like probably told him, we know you know a lot of stuff. You can take the the Forrestal, flying out the window, or you can like not say anything. So I think he decided not to say anything, because he was that room I guess they went to was where people that were having suicidal thoughts, or they're having PTSD or whatever, that's where they put them. So it's, we were laughing about it, but it's these people are very ingenious with their evil, and they'll cover up. He was suicidal. He jumped out of the window. Yeah. Okay.
So here's Byrd meeting Forrestal right when he got back from Antarctica. He's giving him a stuffed penguin here. They're good buddies. They're both high-ranking Navy guys. And then Forrestal, he wanted to disclose the UFO secret. He was one of the few that went against the tide there and said, no, the American people deserve to know. And he was known right before they committed him to Bethesda. He was going up and down the halls of the Pentagon saying, we got the Germans in Antarctica. They got UFOs. We don't know what to do with it. And Truman himself said, you got to get him out of here. This guy's going crazy. He cannot be releasing this. And he even talked to the nurses and the doctors in Bethesda, the same thing, that we have this enemy that can fly pole to pole at incredible speeds, like Byrd said in his famous article in El Mercurio newspaper right after high jump. So
strange that none of them talked about that. How about that?
They had to off both of them, and then they got his son. So his son, who was a witness to everything at high jump, was going to Washington, D.C. on a train from Boston, which is not too far away. And he goes missing. He was going to give a big keynote talk at the National Geographic Society, and they think that he was going to reveal too much. So he went missing off the train. They found him a month later in an abandoned warehouse in Baltimore, Maryland, wearing a different set of clothes and one shoe missing. And they said, oh, he just died of dehydration. He must have just got off the train and just got
wandered all the way to Baltimore.
Yeah.
So Linda Moulton Howe, she had the Navy SEAL that revealed Spartan 1. Navy SEAL claimed to have been involved in covert missions in Antarctica where he observed large, green, glowing, and ancient non-human structures / hulls. Location and depth of structures are allegedly situated 2 to 3 miles beneath the ice. He talked about technology and the purpose. So she really went off on that and disclosed quite a bit of stuff there.
Yep. Yeah, and of course I've spoken to Linda many times. She's got a copy of the book, and
nice.
Yeah, and here is some renditions of what Spartan 1 saw inside this giant basalt UFO, which I think is one of the 3 of the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, these 3 giant motherships, which have been known for quite some time. And so this one is partly buried in the ice. This is what it would look like from a helicopter. And then that's the shape of it, like a pentagon shape, black salt. And these giant doors that you just barely touch and they open up, kind of like the Coral Castle.
Yeah. And Leeds Gallup, Edward. So amazing technologies that are kept from us, and I think there's soon to be revealed some of them, and then it'll increase over time. But we're still, taking down the deep state, step by step, piece by piece. I think it's going to take probably I'm thinking like another 10 years before they're completely, or at least mostly, taken down. We got to go through the cleaning process here in the United States. We're seeing that beginning in Minneapolis, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot of deep staters all around the United States have to be taken out and taken down. That's going to take some time.
Yeah, Will. And well, here's your mug and your quote, your nice endorsement of the book. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you.
The second printing, I threw your book covers in there. And
sweet.
So the other thing, there was 2016 and 2017 when John Kerry was down there on election, when Buzz Aldrin made his trip, and the infamous tweet that he's seen the face of evil, we're all in danger, and it quickly got taken down, but not before people got a screen capture of it. And then you've got Prince Harry, the second son of the royal family. He goes down there with a bunch of his army buddies to the South Pole, and they go on a cross-country ski trip for a week. And again, there's supposed to be nothing out there in all directions, just the polar plateau, 2 miles thick of ice, unless they got permission to go see the hole in the ice. Maybe they skied down that corkscrew road a little ways.
Maybe.
Then a couple years ago, you've got Carl Schwab and Christine Lagarde from the EU Central Bank. They were summoned to no other than Rothschild Island. Michael Sala was telling me about this, that there is a Rothschild Island. It's on the Palmer Peninsula, maybe 500 miles from where I was. And they were summoned there to some under ice base, which I think that's where the high ranking members of the cabal, they have some of their headquarters down there.
Yeah. So there's talk that we're basically we're going to take Greenland and Canada, whether they like it or not, and just move our way all the way down to the tip of Argentina, and then we're going to take Antarctica as well. So what do you think of those plans?
Well, it might be high jump too. I don't know, man. They could still have that high tech equipment down there.
Well, we both talk about how the reptoids that have pretty much been run off this world. At least that's what a lot of people that I've talked to that are off-world type, came here to the United States and are helping us to evolve. They say that the basically they've been driven off. The Draco have been driven off. What do you think that's true?
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of people too, including Sala and Linda and others in the know that have a lot of whistleblowers. That they've just been taken out. They've just been removed. No questions asked. Just get out of here. And by the way, one of the bases that was colonized by the Antarctic German was a defunct reptilian base that was donated to them. So they've had a presence down in Antarctica for quite a while too. And the other thing that's really weird is one of the natural portals outside of Earth. There's two of them, one at the North Pole and one in the South. One is the way in, one is the way out. The one on the way out is in Antarctica. And so that too had to be quarantined and shut down. So there'd be no more ins and outs. So, I mean, it really is all roads lead to Antarctica, because all the disclosure stuff we've been talking about for years has a connection with what's going on down there.
Yeah. So some people think that Israel is total evil. I don't completely agree with that. I think there's good guys just like here in the United States, that are there. Some people talked about how they're going around the world. We're trying to take down Iran. I think that's going to happen here within the next, I don't know, by sometime in February. I think that's going to get wrapped up. But I'm just kind of guesstimating what's coming for them. The fleet's moving in their vicinity. They'll be there probably within a week or so and get set up, and then they're going to start taking them down. Now, I think that a lot of these extreme Islamists are connected to the Germans as well, because we know that the Germans, had a lot of Islamists, I guess, Muslims. I've been to Yemen, and I remember seeing in Yemen swastikas on walls in Yemen. I was like, what? It's like, wow. So these guys are definitely, having an influence on the, and, Trump bombing their nuclear facility sites. I think that was basically taking some of that out. Now, you mentioned in your book how, the Antarctic Nazis had blown a nuke close to one of our cruisers and EMP'd it, just to show you that they got some talent. They still got some, toys that, they can, make things very difficult for us. And then they videoed that and then sent the video of that to all around the world so everybody could see, this is what we got. Don't mess around. Wow, that's so you might be right. Maybe they still have some toys. Now we've heard from people that were down there that they had a massive HARP array down there causing earthquakes and all kind of crazy stuff. So what do you think about all that? Do you think they still have some of that, or was it taken away from them? Yeah.
And Michael Sala told me it was on Rothschild Island where they have a giant HARP machine.
Wow.
So a couple summers ago, remember when Greece had those really bad fires that were just raging on the mainland and some of the islands?
Turkey had those earthquakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to back. It was like, what? You never get back to back earthquakes at that level.
Right.
They were devastating. It like killed 10,000 people. So yeah, I think they got them to play along or something.
And it was right around the time when Turkey said that they might withdraw from NATO and that they weren't going to allow the U.S. to use their bases to fly over and attack Iran and stuff. And then they were warned, play nice, and they didn't. And then they got hit with these earthquakes. I'm not sure why Greece got hit. Maybe it was a land grab like Lahaina, but the alternative media guy, Dabu7, he came out with this video. I wish I would have grabbed it at the time. It was amazing because it showed the frequency of a HARP array leaving Rothschild Island and going directly up to Greece.
Wow.
And right when those fires started. So I think that's the smoking gun. They got the Harper Ray down there, and they're manipulating the weather.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing capture.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's people that leak that stuff out there occasionally, and then they go quiet. And so I wonder if they're being given that information. Well, obviously they're being given that information, but they don't do too much. It's kind of like me. I like, okay, I'll release this because I see other people releasing it, but I know from getting spanked several times. You don't go too far, or they'll come after you. So with this book coming out, do you feel any heat from this?
I have not yet, but it's only been a couple weeks since it was officially released. So
I'm not yet. Well, hopefully that won't happen for you, because I feel like a lot of us are getting our we got YouTube back, and because we're on YouTube right now with this. This would not have flown several years ago. It would have been shut down while we're talking. So we're definitely making some inroads. I don't know if they're just like letting us think we got a little victory here and there, and then they're gonna hammer us, or if we really are gaining on them. From what I can see, it looks like we are gaining on them. What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly we're getting a lot more leeway to talk about certain subjects that were taboo. Remember, we couldn't even talk about the V word for a long time, and
sure,
it seems like that's letting up. But there are other places where they're still coming down pretty heavy on certain talk. I mean, we've all heard the antiseptic laws that might pass, and you can't say anything now about the certain people that wear the funny hats in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, we should be able to talk about anything. We've got First Amendment rights.
Right.
It's not hate speech. We're just discussing things that are happening around the world. And if it happens to be a certain kind of people, well, you should be able to talk about that. So that's where I think the new censorship is going to come. And there's already congressmen that said, oh yeah, for sure, it's going to pass, that they're going to do these antiseptic laws.
Wow. Crazy. Yeah.
Huh. And it's happening in Europe too. But they're going.
Yeah. Europe is already, it's in England. England's really far gone as far as like that. So yeah, you look around and you see some of that happening. Are we just an island and we're going to like push out from here? Or are we just next on the list? I used to look at Australia during the COVID craziness. And I was like, whatever they get away with down there, they're gonna push here in America. And sure, every time I was like, okay, they got away with this, and you're gonna see it here next. And sure enough, it was like boom, 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 boom. I do shows with guys that are pushing back on all that down there, coming up with new government ideals and so forth. They feel that they're having a little bit of inroads, but they're not completely gone by any means. Yeah.
Well, remember the old saying from the French philosopher Voltaire, you'll know who's in charge when they're the people you cannot criticize. And so, who are basically saying, nope, talk about anything you want, but just not who's running the show.
Yeah, no doubt. So crazy. So I see us taking Greenland. I think the European push back on that is like super ridiculous. It's like, guys, we like saved you in World War I and World War II, and we're like taking Greenland so we can keep you guys safe and us safe too. What do you think that's going on with that?
There's this video that's going around of a guy saying that there's a craft under the ice, and maybe that's the reason why they want to get Greenland. But also on the northwest section of Greenland is the Thule base. Guess who set that up back in the 1940s?
No kidding. Wow.
The old Nazi base. Yeah. So, and then we took it over, and then they're even doing some Guantanamo style renditions up there and military tribunals, I've heard, as well as down in Malay's Argentina on Tierra del Fuego, that they're also doing. Guantanamo's filled up, so they need some other places
Yeah, Guam and Iceland and the Azores. So there's a lot of those camps from what I've been hearing, and I remote view the one in Guam, and it's pretty substantial. And the one in Guantanamo, it's not like on the surface. There's several layers down. They come in with submarines and drop people off there, from what I've been seeing. So yeah, there's it does seem like we're having some inroads, but like I said, I think we still got a lot of work to do, and they're not done by any stretch of the imagination. They still have their substantial, arrays and so forth that they can really press on us. And we just saw that recently with the fires in LA. Now, I've been seeing massive earthquakes in California, and other people have too. And I think, yeah. So there was a pretty good one. I predicted there'd be a big one in LA within the next couple of days. We'll see if that transpires. But and I think it's going to be a domino. If it does cook off, I think it's going to be go up to San Francisco, crank on them, and then go out off the coast of Oregon and create a tsunami. So I don't know if they're going to be separate or if that's going to happen all at once. So what do you think they're having some influence on that, or is that just part of the Earth doing its thing?
Well, it's in the patent that they can set off earthquakes and even get volcanoes to go, and so much more with using the HARP arrays and different NexRad and different satellite frequency technology. But I think it's also interesting to note right now, Michael, what's going on in the financial world, because gold and silver were skyrocketing today. Gold's up about $100.
And everything else is down. This is unusual. When everything's down, gold and silver go down with it. This is the first time I've seen gold and silver break off and keep going up. Yeah, good point.
Keep going up and way up and up. So
brand new highs when everything else is crashing hard.
So I think the investor class knows that. They're getting out of cryptos, they're getting out of the market and putting it into precious metals, especially silver, because the Comdex did not deliver. And there are companies like Tesla right out here in Nevada at their Gigafactory. They absolutely need silver for industrial use. Samsung has a phone that needs silver. They can't get delivery. And the e-car out of China, they're all having delivery issues. So they're willing to pay whatever it takes to get some of that silver. And Comdex is just their paper fiction is out the window. It's not supplying these big corporations. So today, and I was watching it from early this morning, what's going on? Silver closed at 72 on Friday. It's now hovering in the mid 90s, and it will probably break 100 tomorrow. because they'll only let it go up about $15 per day, or they'll just shut it down. But the dam is breaking. So I would say that there's even a correlation with what's going on in the financial markets, most especially the precious metals, and what's going on the global stage as well, that everything has an interconnectivity about it.
Yeah, and with the earth changes, I think, that are coming.
Yeah.
So let me show you real quick a little USGS earthquake activity. It's kind of like up in your neck of the woods. So I've been feeling that something's going to come for Nevada. So hopefully we won't get hammered too much. But you see right up in here, what is that area? Let me. I'm pressing on it. It's
real close to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Have you been feeling anything there?
I have not, but I have felt earthquakes here, which are supposedly very rare. And by the way, one of the remote viewers that I was talking about earlier that remote viewed and saw some of these cloning laboratories in Antarctica, she also is saying that she's picking up on big earthquakes on the West Coast. And
yeah, there's a lot of us are, and some people that are super accurate. I picked up on this stuff for a long time, and I've narrowed it down to like a couple of days sometimes, but this one is kind of a little squirrely. I can't definitively say that we're going to get a massive one, although I'm feeling there's one coming, and it could be within the next couple of days because we've had a lot of activity come off the sun. And usually when that similar activity happens, we get super mega quakes. So we could be seeing something coming up.
There was a really strange, out of the normal earthquake in Illinois yesterday or today, and that could trigger the new Madrid fault line.
Right.
Which is, could really be devastating.
Yeah, it's happened before. So crazy. All right. Thanks, Brad, for coming on, talking about your amazing book, Secrets of Antarctica, The Untold History of the Ice Continent. All right. So, I mean, the pictures in here are worth every cent of this book. But, of course, there's, lots of information that's written as well. And I know you did that with my book that was kind of flailing from the other book company that took my information and stole all my money. But you took the Awakening of the Warrior and put all kinds of great pictures in there. Just gave it, breathed some life into it. So and into a warrior. So thank you for that. And your work is just phenomenal. I love talking about your work. I love we've been to a lot of conferences, and you lead roundtable type event. I've been in a lot of roundtables with you, and your questions are just incredible. So your research is superb. I've seen a lot of your presentations at these events as well. I remember coming to one of them. It was in Vegas, and you had the giants, and you had a slide presentation about giants. I was like, holy moly, God! If you don't believe in giants, which I did, but after seeing your presentation, you have to be like completely no brain cells to like believe there's not giants. So really, really good job. So like I said, your information is just impeccable. Good job.
Oh, thank you very much. And just to remind your listeners, you can get Michael Jaco's books. You can get all of my books at cccpublishing.com, and then other authors like Laura Eisenhower and Leo Lion-Zagami, who's both been on your show. So a lot of good stuff there. And of course, if they're my books, you can get a signed copy. You order off of cccpublishing.com. And we just got the brand new second printing showed up today. So I had a copy to show everyone at the interview today.
Well, I hope you have like 5 or 6 more. So that'll be great. So congratulations and outstanding work. And we look forward to, doing shows with you in the future. I'm sure you're going to be coming out with some more. What's your next book? You got anything planned?
Oh, yeah. I'm already halfway done with a book called Underwater Archaeology. Ooh. About a lot of megalithic sites that are underwater. Now, how do you build a megalithic site underwater? I think that is pretty much a smoking gun that there had been antediluvian civilizations around the world. Some of them are very old. Yeah, so they could only have been constructed during the last ice age when the sea levels were much lower. And then my 13th book, which I just applied for the Library and Congress number with the others, is Giants of Antiquity. So I will be coming.
Yay. Good. Fantastic work. Yeah. Well, thanks, Brad. And look forward to having you on in the future. Thanks a lot.
Well, you're absolutely welcome, and always great to talk to you too, Michael. Thanks for having me on.